What's up, everybody? Sam Dando here. Gonna do a deck tech today for Florian. So I actually filmed this video once already. If you didn't know, if you're not one of the local players, I've actually been playing Florian for probably about like the last 2-ish months. Ever since he became really bad, I decided that at that point I could now play Florian. So it's perfect timing now with the Germinate unbanned for me to come out, give you all this information that I've been acquiring over the last few months and really help all those bandwagoners that want to jump on Florian, or if you are wanting to return to Florian, I can provide you with some more information about what's going on in the meta, what the matchups are like, and what I think is the ideal way to build Florian. Now, of course, there's still some things up in the air with the current things that have been banned. I obviously haven't been able to test everything of how it's been adapted. And of course, Super Slam is right beyond the horizon, so a lot of stuff will change at that point. But I think this core currently is like the best build that I've been able to find and or work with. Obviously, I'm biased because I built it, but it's also nothing incredible, right? Florian is Florian. It's a pretty straightforward deck. The cards that you do play and what you don't is pretty resolved, or pretty solved at this point, and resolved, you could say. But why am I even playing this deck? So if you don't know who I am, some of you newer players probably know me just from the videos that I've made, but I actually once was a pretty decent player at this game. My first top 4 at a calling was with Briar. So I'm very familiar with Rune Blades. I've been playing Earth Rune Blade for a very long time. But Florian was a hero in particular that I really hated. When he first came out, I was really interested in him, but the playstyle was super annoying. I really disliked playing against Felling. So that's actually one of the big reasons I played Fi for a large portion of this year, was because it destroyed Florian. And that was my mission, was I just wanted to kill Florian, kill Earth heroes, because I really disliked their playstyle and I hated Felling. But now that he got really bad, there was a part of me that was kind of yearning for Chanamon Heroic again, you know? All those times that I bodied people with Chanamon Heroic and felt the power of Earth was calling to me. And so because, as per usual, I can never play a deck if it's the best deck in the format, but now that Florian kind of fell out of grace and a lot of people threw him aside because he just wasn't one of the best decks anymore, I have then picked him up and I've been playing him, and I have honestly been enjoying it a lot. I'm not gonna lie, I did come around. Even though I was kind of trying to be like a hipster about it, I actually think it's a super fun deck. One of the few decks in Flesh and Blood right now where your micro decisions don't really matter because they're not super impactful. And by that I mean, like, he doesn't have very complex sequencing, right? You hold a blue, you pitch it to grass, you swing sword. You see Felling in your hand, you play the Felling. You see Plow, you play the Plow. He doesn't have complex sequencing issues like a lot of ninjas may have, for example, or other aggro decks, or Gravy Bones, which is a very complicated deck. But what he does have is a very complex macro game plan, which has been very fun because it's allowed me to feel like I'm playing Flesh and Blood again, where a lot of decks in the game right now just don't exactly feel like Flesh and Blood. And for an old timer like me who's been playing for about 4 years now, I really have been enjoying that aspect of feeling very back and forth, feeling like I can actually play the game for a long period of time, you know, have 30, 40-minute matches. And of course, the thing is, with him, if you actually get to play against a hero that is trying to play Flesh and Blood, you are just far better than them in almost every way because your value generation is crazy. You just have such good mid-ranging capabilities, and then you also get Felling. And then you just have all these like guaranteed true damage win conditions like Channel the Millennium Tree, which is just pretty ridiculous. So the deck is still very strong. Now, a lot of people dropped him because the meta adapted and became kind of unfavorable. Gravy is a tough matchup. The wizards are very difficult, like Kano is basically unwinnable, Acilio can be very tough, Verdance is very tough. So he just kind of got a bad spread. But Assassins are still some of the best decks, and you actually destroy Assassins. So you can kind of have that. Any other deck that plays normal Flesh and Blood, like I was saying before, like Ira or Brutes, you also kind of roll over. But if you do have to play against some of those heroes with the auxiliary game plans where they kind of have an alternate win condition, that is where it gets tough. So now the Germinate is unbanned. I've been seeing online through the discourse being, oh, now Florian's going to rise back up to the top. Some people have been saying it's completely irrelevant, doesn't matter. Other people have been saying that now they might look to consider Florian, pick him up again, and maybe he'll have greater impact into the game. As someone who's been playing him throughout this meta, I will say the deck is still incredibly strong. Like, functionality of what Florian does, baseline, is just absurd still. But his matchups can be a little bit more, have higher variance, especially when you get into those really bad matchups. But like, Gravy is not an unwinnable matchup. There's a lot of skill that goes into it. You have to have a decent sideboard plan to go into it, but you do have a viable win condition into Gravy. You can just kill him and you can fatigue him. So you do have options. which I think is the biggest thing that deters people from wanting to play Florian when they consider, well, how do I even beat Gravy? So let's just get into it. I feel like I've talked enough at this point. A lot of you probably don't care anymore what I have to say, so let's just get to the deck. The biggest reason I play this deck is because I get to use my Shining Tyranitar. That's pretty much like 80% of the reason why I even decided to play Florian in the first place. So when my Florian ability comes online, I get to put the Tyranitar out, and then I get to play Shining Tyranitar. So really fun. I don't have much of my Pokemon collection left, but I have a Shining Charizard that I pulled as a kid, and then I have this Shining Tyranitar. So I've always looked for reasons that I can use it in Flesh and Blood, and now I have the perfect reason because they both T-pose and they both deal with mountains and stuff. So it kind of basically works. You know, it's almost the same thing. So I'll leave that up here. Now let's get into the deck. I will say, you're not going to see anything incredible here, right? The innovations have kind of been made. Florian kind of builds itself, so I'm just going to go through this pretty quick. The sideboard is more where things get a little interesting. So, of course, we have Triple Felling, one of the dumbest cards in Flesh and Blood right now, and of course, one of the most powerful cards in the Earth Toolkit. You have 3 Command and Conquer, obviously, just one of the best staples, 3 E-Strike for Go Again, 3 Rune Rager Swarm for Go Again, 3 Swarming Gloomveil for Go Again, and then we have our classic Best Earth action card. We have Arcane Seed's Life, and then we also have 3 red Rupon Carapace. Now, again, this is nothing innovative. This is pretty much what everybody has been doing, and I'm sure that a lot of people, when they look to build this deck, this is exactly where you start. You just throw these cards in, and then you go from there. Similar thing with the yellows, right? We played triple yellow Rootbound Carapace, and then we're playing triple Plow Under. Again, nothing innovative. This is basically like step 1. If you're going to build Florian, you put these cards in your deck. I'm not going to take credit for that. Now let's get to the blues. This is where there's maybe a little bit variability, but here we have Germinate back. Yet again, this card, I think it was fair to ban it at the time, but I was saying that it definitely needed to come off the ban list after Gravy came in and Wizards have been kind of stepping up. It doesn't really help or impact those matchups at all. It just kind of makes the matchups you were good at already a little bit better. But Florian did suffer from a fatigue issue, especially with Guardians getting some buffs. I was getting into matchups against Victor in particular where I was actually getting fatigued out and I was having a hard time. If I lost my Millennium Trees, if I got hit with a big Peck Perfect and I lost 6 or something cards, you can get fatigued. So it is nice to have Germinate back in the deck as a tool so that it will help you kind of pivot in those late game. And then also pairing it with Everbloom Life, I think could add to some really cool, interesting gameplay in the end game. And it's also really nice to have another Earth card because I do play Chanamon Heroic and I play Channel Millennium Tree. So just being able to go up to 15 blue Earths rather than 12, which I was playing, does really help with the consistency of that. So again, we got the Everbloom Life. We have Autumn's Touch. We have Canopy Shelter. I'll put that over here. And then we have Fruits of the Forest. So these are the 15 Earths that I was just talking about. And then for other generic cards, we have Triple Trot Along. We have 3 blue Rune Rager Swarm, which is important now with Gravy to just have more attacks with base Go Again. And then we have triple Warmonger's Diplomacy. And of course, I've realized of all these deck techs that I've made, if you look past, pretty much almost all of them have Warmonger's Diplomacy in it. And why is that? You could say, well, Sam, you just kind of favor that card a little bit too much. There's no reason to play it. Well, there is a significant reason to play it, and that's because I have Levi in my local area, and Warmongers is my anti-Levi tech, because every deck he plays gets hosed by Warmongers, and if he was in your local area, you'd understand too, but I have to play this card, because anytime I sit across from Levi, it makes him sad, it makes him cry, and that's enough for me to need to play it. Now, on a more serious note, I do actually think Warmongers is more impactful as well against some other options, which I have been experimenting with Truce, which I think this is like you could either play Truce or Warmongers in this slot right here. I do like Truce, but when I come back and forth between considering should I play triple Truce or triple Warmongers, I always think like, how many games have I won because of Warmongers and how many games have I won because of Truce? And there's definitely way more games that I can consider that Warmongers has straight up won me the game versus Truce, which is just kind of like a nice filler card to have. It kind of does everything you want it to do in a medium to mediocre scale. But Warmongers just has that variance of like, in a lot of matchups, it's a 3-block blue with not a lot of text, which is just good. That's like good enough. And then in other matchups, it just straight up wins you the matchup. And there are enough matchups now, especially with Dio being much more prevalent in the meta. And that matchup, even though you are favored, you can lose that if they just happen to high roll you with max Vs and chaining Cerebellum processors and stuff. And just being able to drop a Warmongers when they have double Cerebellum processor on the board or something, that's a massive amount of value that they just lose. Of course, Marlin is not a massive prevalent meta deck at this point, but Levi plays it, and he plays it with such fervor and excellence that I have to play Warmonger because it just hoses that deck. And it's enough for me to have to try to beat Levi at locals. But there are enough decks still where I think it has general impact, and like even like Kasai and the Warriors that are kind of having a little bit of a resurgence does really well into them as well. So if I had to choose between Warmongers or Truce, I'm still going to play Warmongers again because I have the Levi factor, but I think that Truce, or this is kind of the flex spot. You could put Oath of the Arknight, Condemned to Slaughter, pick whatever flavored blue that you like, and you can play that instead. So this is my main deck. It's 51 cards. Again, nothing extremely innovative here. I think that this is pretty standard Florian stuff if you've been keeping up with Florian and seeing where the deck has kind of been evolving. But I think the sideboard is where we get a little bit more interesting. And I think that's where you kind of see a little bit more of like the meta adaptation or how you're trying to target specific things. So let's go into the equipment first. So first off, again, this isn't extremely innovative. I have Reaping Blade, and then I'm also playing Dread Scythe. Now this may change. I don't know, like when Verdance gets her new card, the 6 arcane damage earth spell, if Dread Scythe is even going to help you at all. It is nice now because it can get you into those game states where they're trying to set up combo, and you can really slow them down and hinder their ability to ever pop off, because it's very difficult to do that with Dread Scythe. But it also is helpful because you don't have the condition with Reaping Blade where you can't gain life, and that does help in Verdance to help pad your life lead, where you can just start gaining life from your arcane seeds and your fruits and stuff, and you don't have to be under the condition of being lower life, which is definitely helpful. So I may keep it. I don't know. I definitely need to test more with Dread Scythe, but just keep in mind that this was in there to try to help the combo against Verdance. But I think at this point they're just going to cut the combo now with Plume going away and the 6 damage arcane spell. They're probably just going to be able to mid-range you out of the game. So I don't know how relevant that is. Then we get to the equipment. Obviously, this is nothing innovative. We have Face Perk, Barkskin, Grasp, Well Grounded. This is like the main equipment that you'll play into basically everything. And then you have Diadic and No Run Boots. So the Arcane Barrier, it's a little futile because the wizards are really tough, but it is extremely necessary. And you might as well. It's such a low impact cost to play the Diadic Carapace, which is really good into Acilio and Verdance, of course. But having Null Rune 3, to be honest, I don't even know if this is significant enough to play it, if I'm being completely honest. But now with Verdance becoming such a powerhouse in the game and it already being a tough enough matchup, it might be worth just to have. I think AB3 is like kind of necessary against her at this point. So at this time, I'm just going to leave the boots in there. And then we have our tokens, but nothing crazy about that. All right, now let's get to the sideboard. So I'm a triple tree, triple mountain gamer. I am a huge fan of both of the channels. I know some people play 2 Channel Mount Heroics. Some people only play 1 of each in different matchups. I actually play both in a lot of matchups. And why that is because a lot of times against Florian, people think that Florian can't convert 4-card hands super efficiently, and they're correct. There are actually a lot of hands that Florian will draw, and if they just pass, it's really hard to do anything with them, or it's extremely low impact. Now, what having the channels do is it allows you to convert your 4-card hands into onboard value that can extend or give you further advantage if your opponents allow you to have an opening. So if my opponent passes and I have 4 cards, being able to just drop a Channel Mount Heroic and set up for the next turn really puts pressure on them, because now if they give me more space, I can then go into Swarm and Gloomveil into CNC for 9, and you get like those mini Briar turns, which are really exciting. But Channel the Millennium Tree is an extremely useful tool. Like, this card wins me so many matchups because you do get into those game states where, against Victor, like I said, with the updated card pool, you can get fatigued a lot of time by Victor, and the way that you actually just close those games out are pretty much always from the tree. Against Riptide, for example, the tree is an incredible win condition. Against a lot of matchups, you will find that the tree is your optimal win condition when you get into that sub 10 life total. But not even if it's your necessary win condition, it just puts your opponent on a timer, because if they do get below 10 life and you establish a tree, they will just die. It's kind of like Reckless Swing or something like that, where it will guarantee that you will be able to close the game out. And so I cannot stress enough how important Channel the Millennium Tree is in this deck now. And if you aren't playing it, I think you really, really need to play it, because especially when you're playing on a more defensive plan. Being able to play Channel Millennium Tree and then just being able to pitch an Earth or, you know, hold 2 cards, hold 1 card, and convert that into damage when you're trying to block out against like a Syndra or something like that, it adds up. It is quite a bit of damage. And there are so many people that when I play this deck at the end of the game, they're like, geez, your tree got like 20 value, right? Because I'm playing all 3 trees. As I'm playing the trees, you know, I'm specifically pitching in to keep them around 2-3 turns sometimes. And the amount of arcane damage that goes through, and you're fine just chilling as Florian, blocking out, pitching, swinging, and then they can't do anything about it. So Channel Millennium Tree is really good, and Channel Mod Heroic really does help now with potentially getting fatigued. Again, now that we have Germinate back, it might not be as big of an issue. But the other thing about Channel Mod Heroic is it is one of your, I would say, necessary pieces in the Gravy matchup. You kind of have to see this card. It can really change the flow of the game, because if you see Channel Mod Heroic early and you're able to just force damage into Gravy's face, you then turn the game into where he's playing on the defensive and you can then just be able to pivot and get tempo to kill him. Versus if you do get it later game and you need to clear allies, it also helps you really efficiently be able to clear the big ones like Chum, and then of course if they get like Humperdinck or something. If you don't have a big attack, having Channel Mod Heroic on board allows you to, you know, be able to break through and kill the allies in a more efficient way, but also just be able to swing big damage face. And I guess while we're talking about Gravy, I might as well just show what else I'm playing for Gravy. So I also have 2 Blanche, which is a huge card against Gravy. I think it's really good. And then I'm playing Triple Outed. Outed is literally just generic head jab. If you've never seen this card, it is one of the only options that you have as Florian to just have true go again on a card with 3 damage. So it helps you clear out the little guys pretty easily, but it also with Channel Mod Heroic just becomes a 0 for 6 with go again, which is pretty significant if you do end up getting into that aggressive game plan in the beginning and being able to just push stuff through. And of course, again, it's also just another card like I was mentioning earlier where sometimes Florian can struggle to convert 4-card hands. Being able to play Outed just allows you to be a little bit more aggressive. Blanche is also really good against Prism, which I think Prism is still an incredibly powerful deck in this game. I think that you always have to respect Prism, and now with some of the other cards that she's going to be having to the card pool and with the meta adapting, I think she just has even more space to kind of enter her way into the game, and it would not surprise me at all if Prism just starts to rise up again. I mean, I feel like Prism is just always that deck that's a top 5 deck that people just kind of forget about or don't always consider, and then she's just always showing up in tournaments performing really well. Granted, with this meta, with Assassins kind of taking a hit, Gravy taking a little bit of a hit, Verdant's taking a little bit of a hit, I think it just opens up even more space for Prism to kind of find her footing. So Blanche is kind of a 2-folded approach. You get to hit Prism and you also get to hit Gravy. And then some of the other Earth mid-range options that I have in the deck, I'm also playing 2 Cadaverous Tilling, and I'm playing 2 Bramble Spark. This is a purple sleeve because I'm a professional and I didn't have 1 more pink sleeve, so don't mind that. I'm not marking my cards. I just straight up couldn't find another pink sleeve for the video. But I really like these because if you do end up getting into those more efficient mid-range fights, these cards are really effective at letting you maximize your value. I'm a huge fan of Cadaverous Tilling. I'm almost playing that in pretty much every matchup. I feel like nowadays it might just be a main deck card, but Cadaverous Tilling allows you to accelerate your Decompose. So it's nice to have another Decompose option in the deck outside of Rootbound Carapace and your Majestics. And then being able to just always be a 2-card 8 ends up being really big, especially when you get into the end game or early game. It's just always good. And then it's also really good against Gravy because it's nice to just have another attack that you can make sure you can guaranteed clear Chum. Especially now with Fearless Confrontation and stuff like that, being able to push past the 6 damage threshold, even the 7 if it's a Humperdinck, being able to go to 8 so that you can guarantee clear a Chum or a Humperdinck, even if they have Fearless in hand, is really important. So against Gravy, I'm playing the Cadaverous and the Blanche and the Outed and the CNC. I also find with Florian, I typically play above 60 a lot of times. A lot of times I'm siding up to 64 or 66 cards. And because of that, adding the Cadaverous really helps because it will balance out your Decompose. Because as Florian, if you've played Florian, I'm sure you get into those games where you're finding all your Earth cards, but you're not finding any Decompose and you're just really struggling to get online. So just upping the Decompose amount when you're going past 60 just helps even out the frequency that you'll be able to find those cards to get online quicker. And then, of course, Bramble Spark is not like a necessary sideboard card. I think that you can kind of use this space to be flexible for what you like. But again, I have really fond memories of this card from playing Briar. I've always been a huge fan of Bramble Spark. And I think when you're playing against Guardians or other decks that can kind of get up to your value trading level of mid-range, it really just helps push the threshold over for like swinging a Felling for 11 and an Arcane is far more significant than obviously swinging it for 8. But it also is really good for like buffing CNCs, right? So you can buff CNC to 9. You can buff your Blanches to 10. I don't think I'm going to ever play this in Gravy and whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Like just being able to push past that threshold. And when players see a Plow for 9 versus a Plow for 6, it's far more backbreaking because not only are they losing their arsenal, but now you're threatening them for 9 damage to face. And if they lose any more cards, then you basically just shut their turn off. But it really incentivizes them because they have 10 damage coming at them between the Arcane and the actual physical attack. It just really helps push the threshold. And again, it helps you in those matchups where you have to be more proactive rather than defensive to be able to clear 4-card hands. I think that's the biggest thing you'll notice about this sideboard is that against a lot of matchups, if you need to be the aggressor or you need to be the person being proactive, like I play this against Verdance again, for example, right? Just being able to, if they give you the option and they say pass and you hold a 4-card hand, to be able to convert that into something really effective. So Bramble Spark really helps with that. It's a great arsenal target. It's great for being more proactive, and it's really great for clearing out your 4-card hands rather than being just stuck with a bunch of clunky blues. Okay, I think I've said enough about that. And then another flex spot is Deny Redemption. I was playing 2 of this last meta because it actually was very impactful against Verdance. It was one of the few cards that I felt like helped me win that matchup to stop their combo because you could just hold it. You just swing Dread Scythe every turn in the endgame, and then you just hold a Deny in your hand. And then when they pop 2 potions, you just pitch the Deny, and then it basically shuts off their combo, and they're not able to then fully combo you again. But now with Plume going away, and them probably no longer going to even be playing the combo, I don't actually know how relevant this card is. It's kind of just like a fragment of the past at this point. So this card, along with Bramble Spark, are things that I'd be looking into consider for different sideboard options. So if you wanted to go heavier into Gravy, you could look at like Blow for a Blow. Or if there's other matchups that you seem to struggle with, this could be an easy flex spot for that. Again, if you wanted to add like another armor piece, like I've considered playing Tunic. I just don't really know what matchups I'd prefer to have Tunic in. So this could just convert into a Tunic slot, to be honest. But yeah, this is more just a fragment of the past. I still need to test it into Verdance to see if it's actually impactful enough in the end game to maybe stop a mini rampant growth or to stop a heartbeat or something like that. But I don't even know if it's really worth. So yeah, I wish I was able to prepare a little bit better, but again, I'm making this video a day after the ban list, so I have no ability to test into the current state of things. And also with Super Slam around the corner, it could really be anything. So let's just say proactively, I'm keeping this in for now for testing purposes, but this and Bramble Spark are definitely spaces that are open for when Super Slam comes around to consider different sideboard options. And then we just have our additional defense package. So we have triple Shelter and then double Haunting Rendition. Oops, there's the other Deny and my Plume that I can't play anymore. Shelter, obviously, incredibly good card. One of the biggest cards to shut down assassins still. And then Haunting, similar thing, incredibly good card and also just really good against assassins. That's why this deck has such a good assassin matchup, honestly, is because you just have so much damage prevention and D-reacts. It's not just the D-reacts, it's also having that ability to instantaneously deny damage between flick knives and the reactions. So having Shelter allow you to so effectively stop daggers, and then also having Haunting as an additional version to do that is so strong. And then of course, additionally, this being a block card is pretty significant because there's more overpower that's showing up in the game now between Marlin and the Guardians. And of course, like Victor, for example, it's really good against Golden Sun. I'm a huge fan of Haunting Rendition. This card is super, super sick. I wouldn't play 3 because it's kind of clunky if you played at 3. 2 is the perfect number. But of course, when you get to endgame and you're online, being able to pitch this as well and be able to create 2 rune chants is pretty significant. So I was playing Sync at one point. I think if you wanted to play a little bit more defensive, you could play Sync. But I think that Florian already is favorable when he's trying to play defensive and has a lot of defensive tools. I think what you want to give to him and add is more proactive offensive options. So that's why I've opted to go for more like the Bramble Spark Deny as my 3 versions, but these could very easily be Sync, right, if you wanted to do that. So Yeah, I'm very curious to know if you guys now are playing Florian, if you're interested in playing him. And I'm really curious to see with Super Slam what cards Earth gets, if he does get any additional support for the cards. I mean, I've kind of seen some of the leaks, but I don't want to talk about that if people are trying to purposely avoid those things. So I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff. But we'll see what happens if there's any more generic support that comes out that will help him in those matchups. But really, Florian right now, I mean, he does have bad matchups, but it's really only like Gravy, the Wizards, and I mean, you can't, obviously Fi, like Fi is still bad, but who the heck's playing Fi? And then Syndra can be a little tough, but you have a lot of tools to be able to fight Syndra as well, where it's not hopeless. You have a lot of options to beat her. Losing Plume was a little rough. I really did like having Plume in the deck to be able to have, again, more of a proactive plan against decks that are trying to be defensive, or I've even played Plume against Fi and Syndra, because being able to just go back-to-back felling usually would win you the game. So we'll see. There's still a little bit of room for innovation and a little bit of room for things to adjust, as we're in a very transparent time right now and things are very open-ended. So we'll see. But I wanted to get this out right away for all you people who were interested in jumping back on Florian, kind of seeing what's been going on. And I just want to let you know that I've been deep in the tank playing a lot of Florian, and I've honestly been having a lot of fun. You know, Fab has been a little tough for me to enjoy recently just because of the meta. Haven't really enjoyed this meta very much. And obviously, I think there's a lot of hype for me leading up to Super Slam between the new Brute heroes, which I'm really excited about, and even the Guardians, I'm pretty excited to see. And then with all the new expansion slots, it kind of feels like I'm in the waiting room. So there's no perfect time than to play Florian, I think, right now, where it's been super chill. I've been having a really fun time playing the Earth Pool again. I've been having a lot of fun playing Runeblade again, even though he's not like a true Runeblade. Having Grasp has been really fun to play with again. Face Purge is really fun to play with. And he's just good. Like, it's refreshing to sit down, have a very consistent deck that you can rely upon, and just be able to rely on your skill and your matchup knowledge to kind of carry you through the game, which has been very refreshing and I think becoming more rare as the game continues to evolve. You get less and less of those decks and less of those kinds of matchup spreads. So while I have it, it's been a lot of fun. So if you've enjoyed this, again, please leave a comment, leave a like. I'll post the deck link obviously below so that you can have access to it. Again, I don't have matchups, so I'm not going to put matchups for it. You can figure that out as you want to play the deck, and it's not very hard. That's the thing with Florian. Like, the sideboarding is quite simple. It's quite straightforward because the deck doesn't really change, and you have very matchup-specific sideboard things, right? Like, these cards are only ever going in against Florian, Gravy, pretty much, and then this is against Prism. Outeds, I only play against Gravy and like Kano, but that Kano is a lost matchup anyway. You might as well just go get food. And then, for example, against like Deny, that obviously never comes in unless it's against Verdance. And the defensive cards basically come in when you're playing against aggressive decks like Dio or Ninjas or anything like that. And Assassin, of course, and then on-hit decks like Guardians. So you're only going to play these against Guardians and then aggro decks. And then, of course, the mid-range package here, this Cadaverous basically is a main deck card for me. I'm going to be honest. I think I play this in almost everything, unless I am trying to have less 2 blocks in the deck against a very aggressive deck or something, or if I'm trying to fatigue somebody. So I will be a little bit more apprehensive, but I've even been playing this card into them just so that I have a more efficient 2-card value play and to help decompose and get online quicker. Bramble's only coming in against the more mid-rangey decks that have defensive capabilities and are going to force you to be more proactive. So again, that's going to be like Guardian pretty much. And then I'm trying to think if there's really anything else I play Bramble into. Yeah, it's pretty much like Guardians. And then if you could think of any other deck that plays a little bit more defensive and is going to be trying to value trade you, Bramble Spark comes in against them. And then, of course, like the channels, like I said, if you really don't know what to do, just play both. Like, if they're really not that bad to have all 6 in. People think it's a little crazy, but I think it's fine. But I think Channel of the Millennium Tree definitely has a higher priority than Channel Mount Heroic. I think Channel of the Millennium Tree comes in a lot. It comes in for most matchups. Because even when you're on a more defensive plan, Channel of the Millennium Tree is just super efficient to be able to play off a 2-card hand and just be able to block out and still push pretty big damage with the Arcane. But Channel Mount Heroic, also at the end of the day, it's a 3-block Earth card that's a red. So it kind of helps with your pitching curve to try to keep other channels around. But also, non-attack action cards are actually very powerful in this deck. They kind of always have been. I've always thought in Runeblade that the non-attack actions are way more impactful than the actual attacks are. But having a higher density of non-attacks is pretty decent, because when you do have Barkskin online, you want to make sure you are always seeing at least one non-attack in your hand, so that you can have that option to have a really efficient block with Barkskin. And then obviously face purg as well. You want to always make sure that you have the ability to face purg somebody. So I don't mind actually having a higher density and playing the triple mountain, triple channel of the Millennium Tree, because of how they interact with the other pieces of Florian's kit, particularly his equipment. So that's how I see it. And then, of course, you could play the Channel Mount Heroic when you're worried about getting fatigued by like a Guardian or something like that. And then, of course, against Gravy, where you want to be more aggressive. And then any other deck where you're trying to be more proactive, I think Channel Mount Heroic is just a good card to have in there, because, again, you could convert 4-card hands and it will turn all your attacks to becoming far more aggressive than what they usually would have been. So yeah, I hope that gives you enough information. Again, it's not very complex to sideboard with this deck, which is what I like. And Florian's a rather simple deck, so I think you'd be able to, at baseline, just pick the deck up, start playing. You already have a pretty high floor. Just getting to that ceiling really comes down to matchup knowledge and having more thought out macro plans. So you got to think ahead about your second and third cycle occasionally based on the matchup. But I think Florian's incredibly strong. He always has been. Even last meta, he was still an incredibly strong deck. He just has some matchups that he struggles with. So if you're able to figure those out and have a little bit of gem luck, you'll have a really great time. Florian's an incredibly fun deck. I'm really glad that I came around, was able to kind of put my morals aside and play the deck and just have a really fun time with it, because I've been enjoying it a lot. And it's even made me think, going into Super Slam, like, man, I'm going to feel a little sad having to put Florian away, you know, when I have to switch to these brutes and figure them out. But I'm sure I'll have a great time with new KO and old KO. So keep an eye out when Super Slam comes around. I'll be doing a lot of decks, texts, and information about that. But I think for me, at this point, until Super Slam, this is what I'll be playing. I'll be playing Florian. I'll be having a good time, just chilling out. And then we'll be back here in a few more weeks, and I'll have a number of decks ready for you at that time. So thanks, guys. Hope you enjoy this. I will talk to you soon. Again, my name is Sam Dando. Keep rocking. Love you. And I'll see you soon. Oh, say hi to me too. I'll be at the next couple events this month. We'll be at World Premiere Montreal. We'll have Chicago Battle Hardened this next weekend. So I'm sure I'll see a lot of you guys there. But I'll love you. Peace.